Hey everyone, welcome back to She First Podcast. I'm your host, Brick Michelle, and today's guest is Trevor. Hi, Trevor.
Hi there, Brooke.
Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Oh, I'm really happy to be here.
So, can you tell our listeners about a little bit about your book? What inspired you to write the tells this side of the Elysian Fields?
Yeah, it was a fun book to write. I've actually written quite a few other books in the past. I'm a retired professor actually in political sociology. So a lot of the stuff in the past has been sort of academic. But a couple of years back, I retired, and I had a lot of stories that have sort of gathered up over the years, particularly back to when I was a teenager and in my 20s. About traveling different places and jobs that I had, and I wanted to get back to doing some other kinds of writing. So I put this book together, and I have to say it's been pretty well accepted so far in terms of just you know interesting stories, quite often humorous stories about, as I said, traveling to different places and jobs and I had and people I met along the way. And so it was an interesting bit of a write, and I'm hoping to continue to write. Am in fact right now writing some other short stories and poetry and other things as well.
Oh, nice, nice. So, the book spans a wide range of experience. Was there a common theme that connected them all?
The main thing was, I guess, well, two things. One, as I said, there's a fair amount about traveling. Some of the trips are, talked about going down to the United States, but others going to Europe, various parts of Europe. And I guess the other thing is just kind of growing up as a young person, experiences you have, the first jobs you have, which quite often are not a great, very enjoyable, and not very well paid either. But just those experiences that are kind of formative when you're in your 20s. And some of the stories involve also, of course, hitchhiking around, which in my 20s was a fairly common thing to do, if not today.
Yeah, true, true. So the title is intriguing. What does tells this side of the Elysian Fields signify to you?
Well, it's the Elysian Fields actually in Greek mythology was kind of a, you can think of like heaven, Valhalla or something. It was the place that all warriors went to after they had had great victorious lives and they die, and so they go off in their afterlife to enjoy lots of wine and pleasure. Well, and the first chapter actually tells how the illusion comes here, but I'm clearly not dead. So these are tales this side of the Elysian Fields, and so that's why it's stories on this side before I pass away, and I won't be writing over on the other side. I don't think so.
Wow. Wow. So how much of this book is based on personal experiences versus creative storytelling?
It's all personal experiences, and one of the very fortunate things, and I've actually talked to other writers over the last number of years about this. I've always said, when you're in the midst of doing something, try to keep pretty good notes. You can rely on memory, and to some extent, I had to, but you can never really totally recreate things. And so, notes about conversations, things you saw, you did, where you are, even as simple things as a restaurant, for example, because those details become really important when you're writing something. So fortunately, I did have a lot of notes that I kept from those travels in my 20s, even into early 30s. And so when it came to actually writing down these stories, I had these notes to go by. So I would say 85% of the stories actually are based on actual notes of the time, somewhat modified, and only a little bit then of memory and perhaps sketching in a few details that you can pick up on Google now just to flesh out stories. But a lot of it was really kind of firsthand accounts.
Nice, nice. So which story in the chapter in your book is the most meaningful to you and why?
Yeah, I think some of the travel stories, one of the jumps out for me, and I know other people reading it have enjoyed it, was one of my first jobs working on a railroad, really a repair crew. And when you're 19 and working on jobs like that, they tend to be really hard, but also really interesting because it's so different than the characters that you meet. Uh, and again, the pay wasn't very great, but the experience was wonderful, even if difficult. Another one I would say was actually my time traveling in Spain when on one occasion saw somebody who ended up being losing money to a con artist and going to a bullfight in Barcelona. That was pretty memorable as well. I think at the time I had illusions of perhaps another Ernest Hemingway. So going to a bullfight seemed topical. So those kind of stories were very much personal and meaningful for me.
Nice. So you actually got to see like a real bullfight in person. How was
Yeah,
that?
it was one of my last evenings in Barcelona, and it sort of resisted it to then, but I decided I would go to it. Uh, Barcelona actually banned the practice of bullfights in 2011. So, but this was before that time, and when I was back a few years later, I tried to go back to the same arenas again because many of the arenas have now been changed into entertainment venues. They don't have bullfighting, but they would have, say, Shakira or somebody appearing in front of a large audience in the former bull ring. So yeah, that was a really interesting experience, and for that one again, I had taken down pretty copious notes that were really useful when it came to actually writing down the story.
Oh wow, that's wow. So your travels took you to places like India, Greece, and Spain. How did these different cultures shape your worldview?
Couple of things actually. I think one, I always had a bit of a wanderlust anyway from the time I was quite young, but it stimulated it even more, and it also taught me a lot about sort of the geography of the world, but also people and politics. As I said, I'm a retired political sociologist, so traveling places and learning something about the history, the politics, even the economics, the culture of these places fed into my later academic career. And I highly advise all young people and even people older to travel. I think that it's the best way for people to actually get to know each other. And in today's world, I think that's a really important thing to do. We have too many divisions among us that shouldn't exist. So traveling is wonderful that way. And again, it just stimulated much of my academic and non-academic life doing those kind of trips. As you said, going to India, to northern India, I went into a region, Ladakh, that is right on the Tibetan border. When I went there, very few Westerners were actually traveling there at that time. And it was a harrowing but also wonderful experience meeting with people who had not seen very many Westerners to that point. Uh, and I tell a story actually in there about going to a very small school where they were showing a movie that night on VHS, as was the case then. Uh, and it was Brooke Shields in Blue Lagoon.
I
And
remember
uh,
that.
and I'm there as a Westerner watching this show, and I'm surrounded by a number of Ladakhi people who I'm thinking, you must find this the most confusing and strange movie to be watching because it bore no relationship to their life. But again, it was a great experience to be in places like that.
Wow. So when you did meet these other people from different cultures and different countries and stuff, how okay. So is it different? Was it different back then versus now? Like, were they more accepting back then, or are they more accepting now? Like, have you experienced anything now?
Yeah, I one of the sad things I think is that unfortunately a lot of places, maybe because partly the bad behavior of some Westerners traveling these places, but also because just the sheer influence of money, so that before, quite often people were interested in meeting you just because you were different and you were interested in meeting them. And so the idea that you are a wallet ready to be opened was not that prevalent. I mean, you paid for things, but and the cost was actually much less than now. What I tend to find now, and I do still travel, but in a lot of places, unfortunately, kind of corporate culture has taken over, and so it's not only that it's more expensive; it's that corporate culture has transformed the experience. And so, as I say to people, if you travel around the world and you go for a coffee and you can find a Starbucks, uh, it's it's not exactly the same as when you would have gone there years ago, and you don't have all these large corporate entities who are part of the scene. So, and the people themselves start to, I think, experience it as you're just another tourist coming in, and so I think it does change the relationship. It's not quite as enjoyable as it used to be. And as I said, it's not the money involved. It's just that so many parts of the world are becoming over touristy and over westernized, and I think that's distracting from the experience. You can still find the experience, and you can find genuine people who are interested in meeting with you, but I think it has blunted the experience from when I would have traveled in my 20s or 30s.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So, what's the most surprising experience you encountered while traveling?
Oh, well, have already highlighted a couple of them. I guess certainly traveling in India at that time was a very different experience, and also pretty harrowing. Not only could you fall off a cliff, driving in a bus, but also you could catch all kinds of illnesses.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but
heard that it was really dirty there. Like, is it true? Like, it's really dirty in certain areas?
some places, and even today, there are parts of India that are underdeveloped. On the other hand, India is rapidly modernizing, and that's good for them. I have no problem with that. So, the fact there is a kind of a budding middle class there, but there are places, as we can find throughout even North America, where sanitation maybe isn't as good as it should be. The infrastructure hasn't kept up, and so, yeah, there are places that it could be hazardous to your health. Um, I think probably in terms of experiences, I recount in the book, and I have another book actually coming out in a few months about having traveled across the Middle East on what was called the Hippie Trail back
Okay.
through Iran and Afghanistan and everything in the 1970s. But as I recount in this book and in that book coming up, I was arrested on a couple of occasions, and
Ah,
so I've seen at least the inside of a Syrian paddy wagon at least for a few hours, and so that was an interesting experience as well. So again,
what?
you file it away as a good story afterwards.
Wow. If you don't mind me asking, you don't have to tell me, but what was you arrested for? Like,
In that case, it was just that being a foreigner coming in, I think they were suspicious that perhaps some foreigner had got into some difficulty,
oh,
and they thought I might be the one that they were looking for.
oh,
Uh,
wow.
so they clarified it obviously within a few hours, and it was quite fine. So
Oh, okay. Okay, cool, cool. So how did your work on the railway in a small town influence your perspective on life?
yeah, I grew up in a kind of working class, middle class family, but I was just out of high school and looking for some work to do, and so I end up with this job, and I recount in the book actually other kinds of jobs, as I said, that weren't the most pleasant or the best paying. I guess what I came away with from that was a real appreciation for working class people and working class life, and I've never forgotten that. Even though I went on to an academic career, I have a great deal of respect for people who work in manual jobs. That I think the class distinctions that we sometimes talk about are shouldn't be there. I think that on both sides, both if you're in white collar jobs or if you're in blue collar jobs, we require a kind of respect across all of those. So, I've never forgot all the blue collar jobs that I worked at over the years. I have a lot of respect for hardworking people.
Wow, that's nice. So, so you played, how do you pronounce it? Hattie Soldier in the biblical movie. What was that experience like?
Oh yes, my movie career. Yes, yes. I was in a movie in Israel for a period of time, over 10 days, where we got to play because we were extras, so we got to play different parts. We were kind of shepherds and all kinds of things. But on one occasion, I was a soldier and fighting. The Hittites were a kind of a early tribe, kind of pre-Bible period. But I got to be a Hittite soldier in a scene where we were chasing people away from a water hole. Water, of course, remains an important thing in the Middle East. And as we were repeatedly doing this particular scene, a number of us Westerners, there was a guy from Australia, one from New Zealand, there was another friend of mine from Canada, uh, wearing this heavy equipment. It was like football practice, so it was, sweating bullets out there, and we kept doing the scene over and over. Finally, we were charging down into the valley, and I felt a stab in the back of my calf, and I realized that the guy from New Zealand, with his quite real spear, had accidentally speared the back of my leg.
Oh,
And so we continued to do the shot, and we did it over again with me with a little tourniquet on my leg, which had a little bit of blood coming out. Anyway, so that was part of my movie career, and the funny part of the story is just the bottom line is some years later, this was all being recorded again on VHS tapes. Well, I actually found the VHS tape, and as I ran through it, I found this small little clip where this Hittite soldier is running down into a gully, and there he is with a tourniquet on his leg, and that's me. So recorded for posterior.
that's funny.
Yeah, again, an interesting story to tell after the fact. Although at the time my leg didn't feel all that great.
Did you ever show like your students this video?
No, no,
You
I
never did.
didn't have occasion. I just was not doing biblical stories at the time in any of my courses, but it would have made for a good story.
Yeah. so so how did life among the hippies in Greece differ from the houseboat in life in India?
Oh, very good question. Well, the life and what you refer to is actually a month I spent on Mykonos, very famous island in Greece. Of course, people still go there. Much more expensive now than it was then.
Uh-huh.
But basically, sleeping on a beach and playing frisbee football on the beach and hanging out with other people from Western countries, the United States, Australia, wherever. And, sleeping on the shore and having lizards run over you in the morning as everybody woke up under the sun. It was a wonderful kind of communal place. We lived very cheaply, and it was a great experience for people to get together and meet each other from around the world. The other experience on a houseboat was less communal in the sense that you're kind of alone on the boat, and there's a few other people around, but it was interesting because it was almost like a trip back in time to the British running the country. The boat was very old, and it had a lot of kind of English books on it and everything. So um, if I was to say about the two experiences, the one of being a hippie on a Greek beach was probably a lot more fun than relaxing on a boat in Kashmir, uh, but still an experience. And what's life about if you're not actually gathering experiences to talk about and remind yourself about later?
Yeah, that's true. Let me ask you a question. This is outside of the question I was going to ask you, but did you ever experience like bad weather in these different countries? Like I know like some have like earthquakes and stuff like that. Like did you ever experience those?
Yeah, of course, we just had a horrible earthquake in Thailand and Myanmar. A number of people killed. And oddly enough, in fact, I still travel. So I was traveling through those countries just this past fall. So I was in Bangkok. So immediately I thought about that earthquake. In terms of the trips talked about in the book, there are earthquakes in various parts of the Middle East. Iran has been badly hit at times by some horrendous ones with loss of life. I didn't personally experience any, but the closest thing would be probably some of the bus rides through mountainous areas that were potentially pretty bad. I've also experienced monsoons in some places, and until you know what a monsoon, you've seen one, you can't imagine how much water comes down and how much is rushing past you. It's like streets all of a sudden become rivers, and the rivers suddenly become like an open sea.
Yeah.
I was in Japan some years ago, and that's not recorded in this particular book. But I was there in monsoon season, and it was amazing to see rivers of water just transforming like waterfalls going over the stairs of parts of southern Japan. So it's if you survive it, these are interesting stories to talk about, and again, you get an appreciation for how difficult it is for people to sometimes live in places where the climate, the geography is not as hospitable as perhaps we live in.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So, were there any particular literary influences that shaped your storytelling for this collection?
Yeah, I've already mentioned Hemingway. Hemingway I think is a wonderful influence for a lot of writers even now because being trained actually in journalism, he knew how to get to the point and how to write in short, meaningful sentences without going on at length. That's a real talent, I think. The other person, I think, and as I was writing at times, I think I was influenced by William Faulkner. And but over those years, I was one of the things about traveling at that time was quite often you had lots of dead time sitting waiting for buses to come or trains or just being in a hotel room with nobody else around. So you caught up on your reading. So I remember, as was typical of those times, reading pretty much everything of Herman Hesse. Read a lot of George Orwell at that time, both his fiction and nonfiction, and Franz Kafka. I read pretty much all of Kafka's works at one time or another. So those were a few of my early influences, and since then I've gone on to, of course, read other people as well.
Oh, okay. Okay, so now I wanted to talk about your upcoming memoir. I'm not going to pronounce that right. so,
Safarnameh, Safarnameh, yeah. It's
um, so, can you
it
tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's the word itself actually is a Farsi word, Iranian,
Oh,
meaning journey, and so it is a much more condensed story of my trip across, as I said, the Middle East, the what was called the Hippie Trail at that time, from Turkey to India in 1976-77,
wow.
and there's a little bit of kind of a background to it. So I talk about the why it is so many people actually traveled. Maybe 3 million Westerners traveled, made that trip during that period and before. So I talk a little bit about the economics, the politics, some theory of that. But again, as I said before, I kept pretty extensive notes on that trip. And so my personal story is actually wrapped into this look at why so many people did it. And the story itself, takes you right through my landing in Turkey in a port called Kusadasi. It's near Izmir, and then going by backpack through. I pretty much traveled on my own in most cases, going on local buses through Turkey, meeting Turkish people. I actually picked up a Turkish English dictionary and would travel in on local buses and talk to people, open up the dictionary and speak to them. I still know about 100 words of Turkish, which Turkish friends tell me actually I still speak it pretty well.
Oh,
And as I said, along that trip, the story about getting arrested briefly in Syria, traveling across Iran at the time when the Shah was still in power, and observing Iran just prior to the revolution that happened in 1979. And again, my experiences at hotels there and meeting with local people. Being in Afghanistan takes up a good portion of the book, and my experiences with a hotel keeper there, Wahid Seljuki, one of several people actually to whom the book is dedicated, and how I learned about Afghani culture, storytelling, a few rather threatening incidents while in Afghanistan. And
yeah, that's
then,
what I was gonna ask you. Like, did you have to wear like their attire while you was over there? Like
yeah,
how they
it,
dressed?
it was not actually, we think of Afghanistan today, of course, because the Taliban was quite a fundamentalist religious group. At that time, Afghanistan was actually quite liberal. In fact, in the 1960s, it was known as a quite liberal state, at least within the capital city of Kabul. And it had a burgeoning university, lots of people dressed in Western dress, same actually in Iran as well. And so I never felt particularly threatened there by requirements to dress or act in a way. You are respectful towards the religion, but I didn't feel particularly harassed by people. The largest issue of harassment might be towards women, because it was a very and so there's at one point I recall in that book that's coming up, in a sense intervening to make sure that a woman from the United States was not going to get herself into danger with some local men there. But in any case, then from Afghanistan, the book takes us on through the famous Khyber Pass, where I was offered to buy a probably CIA produced or maybe Soviet produced uh, pen that actually fired a small shell. It was actually a gun.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
yeah, it masqueraded as a pen, but was actually a gun. And I kind of wished I had actually bought it at the time because I was offered it, and it would have been a great keepsake. But getting it across borders might have been more difficult.
Yeah.
Anyways, from the Khyber Pass, and then going on to India, and then sadly enough, ending my trip over there because I was going to travel longer. But I came down actually with illness. I had severe amoebic dysentery, and which led to pneumonia. So I had to cut my trip short because I was not well at that point. So, which was a pretty common thing actually for a lot of people traveling at that time, as you
Do
said
they have
before.
did they have medications for it? Like how we have medications? Did they
Yeah,
have
you could get medications, and in fact, I was on antibiotics. But the problem with if you get really run down, even if you get over being ill once, at least at that time, uh, there's a good chance it comes back again because your immune system is kind of weakened. And I think that's actually what happened. So finally, I fly back from India to Canada, and that was the end of that trip. But the book, basically, as I said, is more a condensed version of a particular trip and everything that happened along the way, as opposed to the current book, which is really a snapshot of different stories at different times and everything. But they are all personal stories written against the backdrop of other things that are actually going on. And, so readers again can look forward to that. I met with the editor just fairly recently, actually, and the book is supposed to be out probably by end of spring here, maybe early June or so.
Hmm. Okay, nice, nice. And where can you tell my listeners where they can purchase your books?
Yeah, this one here, Tales this side of the Elysian Fields. I think you could probably certainly get it on Amazon. A lot of small bookstores are carrying it. I know here in Western Canada, a number of them have it, and again, I think people can order it easily enough. You can even try to order it if you like through the publisher, Endless Sky Books out of Regina. I know that Ed Willett, the publisher, would be more than happy to sell you one. Um, and the other book, when it comes out through the Athabasca University Press up here in Canada. And it will also be appearing in various bookstores and again on Amazon. So it
Nice.
will be certainly available. And I think people will find both of the books actually really interesting reads. And people of a certain age will probably very much
Yeah.
identify with it, as my hunch.
So let me ask you a question. So can you? I really wish you would have it on Audible because I love reading audiobooks. So have you thought about putting them on audiobooks yet?
My understanding is that Tales This Side of the Elysian Fields will be going to audio. I don't know exactly when that will be, so it may be in the works or in the next few months. But my understanding is it will be. And I'm not sure about the second book, but I will look into that and get back to you, Brooke, and to your listeners, and we'll see what we can do.
Yes, I'm excited. So, is there any advice you would like to give future travelers who are writing their books or writing traveling books? Like, is there any advice you would give them?
Yeah, I guess a couple things. One I've already mentioned is take good notes about whether you're writing it down on your cell phone, your iPad, or whatever. But keep good notes because it's the details become really important in writing. The second thing about travel generally, I would say, is this: travel is not the same as it used to be, and to some extent, the joy of discovering different things is somewhat being diminished. But there are wonderful experiences to have, and there are real threats in the world from various causes. But people should not be petrified to leave their homes to go out and explore the rest of the world. You want to take certain precautions. Obviously, you want to take your vaccines and whatnot, but don't be afraid to go out and experience the excuse me, the world, because it is a wonderful place. Excuse me. It is a great place. There are wonderful people out there. For the most part, people are pretty friendly, and they want to get to know you. So go out there, bite the bullet, travel, explore. You've got one life to live. Go out there and enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. I want to thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast today, Trevor, and I hope you have a great day.
You too, and it's been a lot of fun, Brooke. We'll have to get together another time. You
Oh,
take
yeah,
care.
for your next book, we're going to have to have you on it again.
Sounds good, Brooke.
Bye. You have a great
I know.
day. Hey everyone, I want to thank you all so much for listening to my interview with Trevor. If you'd like to purchase his books, you can go on Amazon because they're on Amazon, and there's other websites that you can go on that he mentioned. And I hope y'all have a great day, and thank you all so much for listening. Bye.